This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management.
Our mission at Mosley Wealth Management is to help people make sure they never run out of income the rest of their life and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes.
Since 1995, Tom Mosley and his team have been creating comprehensive, custom financial plans to help you preserve what you've earned and pursue what you've envisioned.
In retirement, a lot of people have built a great lump sum. We call that your lumber yard. But you need a blueprint to put that lumber yard into a plan that you can build a retirement house to live in.
What's on your mind this week, Southern California? The stock market, taxes, inflation, income, Social Security, how to ease into the life of your dreams? Let's discover conservative financial strategies starting right now. This is your Right on the Money Radio Hour with Tom Mosley.
And a very happy weekend to you. You are listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management based right here in Southern California. And I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. We are continuing this weekend with our very special 4-part series talking about all the different risks that today's modern retiree is facing. Before we dive back into that content, Tom, my friend, always good to be with you. How are you this week?
I'm doing well. A couple of weeks recovered from the wedding, and we're doing well.
Good. Well, I know busy as always, and we're excited to spend this time with all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. This has been a 4-week series, and Tom, I think it's important just to represent why you were so passionate about doing a dedicated 4 weeks on these different risks that people are facing.
Well, things don't always go well.
Mm-hmm.
As Forrest Gump might say, stuff happens in life, and risk are what happens when you expose someone or something of value to harm, danger, or loss. That sounds like I'm reading a definition. I am. I'm reading the definition of risk.
Mm-hmm.
And risk is there. It's whether you know it or not. To be not aware of it is a real fallacy, and to not address it is a real fallacy, and it could potentially torpedo your financial plan if you don't realize the risk. Now, we've talked about so far in the past 3 shows, and if you missed those shows, you can go to Mosley Wealth Management, Mosley wealthmanagement.com, and we have a whole listing of our radio shows that are on there. We've talked about 8 risks. We're going to try to get in 4 today. And I said try because we're going to cover them well. And if we don't get to them, we'll extend it into next week. But my point is there are 37 different risks that could be listed. And we're just taking the top dirty dozen, the top ones that are really there that can torpedo what you're doing. You've worked 30, 35, 40 years to get to the point of retirement, and you've built a nest egg. And I sometimes half jokingly say to people, so they get my point, when they bring in all their statements and everything they've got, that's everything they've worked for all their life.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, it's everything they've got to live off of all the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that crucial. And when there are threats to it, when there are things that could put that money at risk, but it's not the money, it's your life that's at risk, and your lifestyle that's at risk, and the enjoyment and the pleasure that you've always looked forward to in retirement. And when there's something out there that's a threat to that, you need to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I live in an area in Placentia right by a golf course, and we have coyotes,
Mm-hmm.
and I have 2 small dogs. So I know that those coyotes, because I've seen them in my backyard. I've seen one walking the fence one time of my backyard. So I know there's a threat out there. There's a risk if I let my dogs go out in the backyard. So guess what? I love my dogs. I go out with them every time they go out, Kristen, even if it's in the middle of the night, okay? And they let me know. But I go out with them because I know there's a threat out there. There's a risk that they're taking if they go out by themselves. So you've got to protect what you have, and that's why it's so crucial to address these risks.
Well, and it's a classic case of what you don't know can hurt you, and that's why we wanted to really shed some light and drill deeply into these dirty dozen, as you so well stated, Tom, these
Right.
12 different risks that we've been moving through. And so the first one we want to talk about this weekend is withdrawal rate risk. This is really fascinating because we did talk about sequence of returns risk a couple weeks back, but this is a close cousin, if you will, of that, right? So explain what you mean by withdrawal rate risk.
Well, let's go back to sequence of returns, and that more focuses on leaving your money, say, in the S&P 500 and just the ups and downs of the market. It could be very good to you, and it could be very detrimental to your financial future. If you hit it at the wrong sequence, you hit it when the market's going to be down for a year or two. The first year, if you take a big loss, it can really put you in the loser's bracket for retirement. I say it because I've played so much baseball with my sons and my son and daughters with Little League and softball. And when you get into a tournament, you get in the winner's bracket or you get in the loser's bracket. And once you're in the loser's bracket, you have to play a lot more games to get back to the championship than if you just stay in the winner's bracket. So sequence risk has to do with the market. Withdrawal risk, and the reason I want to focus and draw this thin line between them, withdrawal risk has to do with the Monte Carlo model that most brokers use, where they say 4%, you can take out 4% and you should be okay. Now, that was the Monte Carlo model when it came out 30 years ago, 25 or 30 years
And just to clarify, they're saying if you take out 4% of what you've accumulated every year for the rest of your life, you should be fine and not run out of money.
You should be fine. And then if you have somebody run and show you a complete Monte Carlo simulation, you're going to have in those last few pages, a few pages that'll say you've got a 76% chance of not running out of money. It'll give you a percentage of possibilities of you being successful. But at the same time, 4%. And then they came out and they said, well, maybe it's 3.2%. Okay. And remember the environment we're in. Basically, since 2009, the stock market is up close to 600% since that day in March of 2009 when it hit around 6,000 in the Dow Jones. So you've got to understand that 4%. The environment has been basically good. Let's take out 2022 when it was down 22% overall. So in a great environment, 4% works, and then they think, maybe 3.2, maybe 2.8. Now, what that translates to is if you have $1 million in retirement and you need $40,000 a year, that's what you can take out, 4%. But remember, if you're taking that out of an IRA, you're going to be paying tax on that. You're going to be paying tax on that as well. So if you really need 40,000, you may have to take out 50,000 to get the 40 that you need. So it might be 40 and you end up with 32, or you might take out 50 and end up with 40, but you're going to have more than $1 million. You're going to have 1.25 million to take out 50,000. So that's my point. It's a set figure. Now, that's pretty unrealistic because the landscape of the market is up and down every single year. And if it's down 20% and you're taking out 4%, it's a big, big difference. Now, here's the problem. We call leaving your money in the market, leaving it in a lumberyard, okay? And your 401k, your 403b, your IRA, that's your big lumberyard. We offer on this program, and Kristin, you can give them the number. We offer a retirement blueprint.
All you have to do is call 888-930-5609. And Tom's going to explain more about what this involves, but you're going to be able to come in for no cost, no charge, no obligation, and sit down and have the team of Mosley Wealth Management build you your very own personalized, customized retirement blueprint.
Now, what do we build it out of? We build it out of your lumberyard. We take that 401k, 403b, IRA, Roth IRA, everything you've got, pension, rental units that are coming in, maybe property you're going to sell, that's your lumberyard. That's not a plan, it's a lumberyard. And we begin to structure, and we address 6 things: income, inflation, investments, taxes, your healthcare coverage, and also your legacy, how you're going to leave it. We address that and we build that plan for use, not on a shelf somewhere that we can send it to you, because we have to have the lumberyard that you have built. Your other alternative as to having a real written plan is just going to that lumberyard with 4%. if that's your suggested withdrawal rate. And that's what we're talking about here. And the risk is when you're 65, you go to that lumber yard and it looks great, man. You take a few, so to speak, 2x4s and some plywood, and you take what you need that year, and maybe you're going to do a little extra. You're going to take that trip to Europe, or you're going to go on the safari you've always wanted to go on. So you take a big chunk of lumber that year, and you look pretty good. And you look good when you're 70. And then you go to that lumber yard just to get your 4% out for when you're 75, and you look back at it and you say, wow, that lumber yard's not nearly as big as it used to be. Wow, I don't know if that lumber yard is going to last for as long as I do, because I'm pretty healthy. And it begins to not just be a financial drain and a thought drain on you, but it begins, I've seen this happen, Kristen, it begins to be an emotional drain on you. If you're just using a withdrawal rate according to the Monte Carlo simulation, and you're just pulling money out of your lumber yard, it's a hope strategy. You hope it's going to last until as long as you do. And you don't know whether should we take a little bit less? And here's the problem. A lot of people are so fearful of running out of money in their 80s that they won't spend the money they need to spend in their 60s.
Yes, we've talked about that a lot on this show.
It's the go-go years. You're as healthy as you're ever going to be, likely. You're as financially wealthy as you're ever going to be. You're ready to go. You've got the energy. You better go get her done during your 60s. But if you're just pulling out of a lumber yard 4% a year and you're not sure that you're going to have the money you need when you're 80, it's going to be sometimes for some people emotionally traumatic for you to start spending money in your 60s. And you could be endangering what you've got in the 80s. Why not get a plan?
Yes.
Why not get it all written down? Why not address your income with a certain amount of your lumber yard? And we say that's turning that part of the lumber yard into a paycheck. And the rest of your lumber yard becomes your playcheck. That's what we build when you come in to see one of our all-star advisors.
And here's the reality, Tom, to your point, a strategy of hope is not a strategy. We don't want you to hope you'll have enough or hope that you won't run out. There is such beauty in receiving the confidence when you can see it written down, see the numbers, see how it makes sense, have a plan in place. It gives you permission to spend that money so that you can enjoy the retirement of your dreams. And that's what we are about here at Mosley Wealth Management. So again, that number to call to be able to schedule your time to come in and receive your complimentary retirement blueprint, 888-930-5609. We've got a lot more risks to cover on today's show. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this.
Is having $1 million enough to retire? For years, many have considered this to be the goal amount to have for retirement savings, $1 million. But that's the $1 million question. Is that enough for today's modern retiree? Are you sure you've saved enough for a 25 or 30-year retirement? Are you concerned about covering large expenses, including taxes and long-term care? If so, you're not alone. But there is a solution. With a comprehensive financial plan, you can take control of your finances to help you achieve your long-term goals. At Mosley Wealth Management, let us help you work towards peace of mind by implementing a complete retirement strategy. Call Tom Mosley and the team of Mosley Wealth Management right away to receive your complimentary, comprehensive written financial plan. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Right on the Money. This is Tom Mosley, and I'm here with our host, Kristen Oakley. And during the break, after having in that first segment talked about withdrawal rate, Kristen, you had a great story that I wanted you to share of something that happened in your own family recently about this 4% holy grail of financial planning, 4% withdrawal rate. Would you share that story?
I'd be happy to, yes. So my sweet in-laws, I have been in this industry now for over a decade, and they were reluctant to move their finances from where their money had been, their IRAs. I finally recently convinced them because I knew that where they had their money, it was a bigger corporate firm. It wasn't engaging in the comprehensive, holistic financial planning process that, of course, we are so passionate about here at Right on the Money. And I knew it wasn't in their best interest. Well, long story short, after a decade of being in the industry and a part of the family, they finally said, yes, we want you to go ahead and help us with this. So I did, and we got everything moved out of that corporate name. It's a name everybody would know. But here was the devastating thing. When I dug more deeply my father-in-law, who is now 80 years old, apparently back when he was 62 and he went ahead and retired, his financial advisor, and I'm using air quotes to say that, at this big corporate place, had advised him to begin taking out 4% a year from his IRA every year, even though he did not need that money to live off of. So
Wow.
here he'd been taking 4% for 18 years, 4% a year, paying taxes on that, creating greater tax liability, dwindling down the balance. So now it's earning less because there's less in there to compound and grow. And it just really broke my heart that someone who he trusted said, yeah, the 4% rule, this is what you do. Once you retire, you just withdraw 4% a year for the rest of your life and you're going to be fine. And thankfully, my in-laws are going to be okay. But the sad reality is there's a huge opportunity cost to what the strategy was that this person enacted for them.
At best, that was a big communication error between an advisor and a client, and that should have been an ongoing thing where your in-laws should have been counseled every single year as to what they were taking out. And if you don't need the money, you don't need to take it out. Now, you do reach a point where the government needs the money, so you have to start taking it out and paying tax out of IRAs and 401ks. But that is a great story, and that's the reason I wanted you to share it as we started this next segment, and I sort of took your role and you took my role because it illustrates what happens if you just stick with a rule or a philosophy or something. And sometimes if you don't have several $1 million with you're working with the big box firms, you don't have their full attention.
Yeah.
And they're not paying attention. You're not getting that personal service you need from maybe
set it, forget it. It's the lazy way of doing financial planning, right?
It is. And to your father-in-law's point, maybe he had heard about the 4% rule and thought he was doing the right thing. Obviously, he did all of that time.
Yeah.
So, you won't find that with us. When we talked about the retirement blueprint, our process is ease into retirement. If you bring all of your stuff and you meet with one of our advisors, we've got offices all over Southern California. The first appointment is an envision appointment where we get a vision for where you are and where you want to go. Then we do an analyze appointment where we analyze. You may have some things that are really good and you may have some things that need to be fixed. If you want us to fix them, then we set up a strategize. Envision, analyze, strategize, the first 3 letters of ease. But the one thing that we do that didn't happen with your father-in-law is we constantly evaluate every 6 months to 1 year your situation, or more often if things change, so that we can make sure you're on track and you're doing the right things. And that's where we get envision, analyze, strategize, and evaluate, ease into retirement. So it's so important that you have a plan, and that plan is just not somebody else's plan or a cookie cutter model, but you have a plan for you.
Yes. And that you understand the plan and you're working with someone who you feel comfortable enough to ask questions and to have that ongoing conversation, right?
There was a disconnect, obviously, between this guy retiring as the advisor at this big box firm and turning it over to somebody else. And up front, most of the big box firms pay their people a big bounty for bringing in a client, but maybe not so much on an ongoing basis. And so whoever takes over your account might just not have the interest that somebody who actually is bringing that account to the big box firm because of the way their pay structure is set up.
Right. Yeah. So much we could continue on that conversation, but thank you for allowing me to share that story. And I think it's just important to point out, as we've said, with this whole 4% rule, a lot of times rules of thumb are not the way to go for your individual situation. And this is why you really need to develop a solid withdrawal strategy that you are comfortable with, that can be adjusted according to when life does happen. And so important to have that conversation. So Tom, thank you for letting me share that. I know we need to move on and talk about the next risk on our list, which is long-term care risk. This is a big one, Tom. This is one that I think often keeps people up at night. It's not fun to think about, but this is why a lot of folks are afraid of running out of money, is because of potential long-term care costs.
It's probably the most fearful look I see in people's eyes when they're talking about what happens if we need long-term care. And that may be because not so much they've heard advertisements about long-term care. It seemed like in the middle 90s, when I first got into this industry 29 years ago, there was a lot of even commercials about long-term care and encouragement about long-term care, because there were lots of carriers, lots of insurance companies that were in the long-term care business, but then they realized how expensive long-term care was. And the policies were so hard and still are very hard to qualify for at a good rate. So many companies have just gotten out of long-term care. And the one major carrier in the state of California right now is offering a buyout for some of their policies. So they're actually trying to buy people out of the policy that they've committed to. And so there's all kinds of things and all kinds of fear, because we talked about risk at the beginning of the show and what it means, but associated with risk for people who understand there's risk is sometimes fear. And you're fearful as to what might happen. So long-term care policies are out there. They're very expensive and a little bit difficult to qualify for. There are some hybrid policies. There are different policies that are out there. And I say policies because you cover risk with insurance. You've done that for many, many years on your house, your health, for many, many years on your life. Why not do that for long-term care? And also, I would add, for income. And there's some of those that are hybrid policies that allow you to address one thing and then address long-term care with the other. For instance, there are some life insurance policies that will also have, they call them hybrid policies, that will cover you to some extent with long-term care. If you don't use that money, your family still gets it through the life insurance aspect of the policy. If you do use the money, it's like borrowing money from your life insurance policy, a whole life insurance policy. So there are some life insurance policies that are hybrids that will cover long-term care. The one I like to use, like if somebody comes in, we had a recent client came in, and they had a pension between the two of them. And it was a married couple. And it could be the same if you were single and you had a pension and a social and your income needs were met. Well, we really didn't need to add any money to address your income needs. So that's a good situation. If you do need money for income needs, sometimes we use fixed indexed annuities. We've talked about it before on this show. We don't sell annuities. We place annuities when they're needed, and it covers your income if you've got an income gap. But there's some people come in and they've got the income coming in, it's okay. And so what we do is there are hybrid annuity policies that are full-fledged annuities that three things, if you ever need the income, you can always turn it on. You say, when might I need income? You might need income if you're a married couple and one of you passes away and you lose the lower Social Security. Bingo. It's a great time to turn on a $250,000 annuity if you've got that excess money so that you can put it over there and you're probably never going to use it the rest of your life. Number one, it could be used for future income if you need it, especially if there's only one of you. Number two, you could use the annuity. There's some of them have riders now, and they don't cover long-term care specifically. They cover the activities of daily living. Some of them have provisions that if you're making, say, $10,000 a year off of that annuity, and you hit 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, they will double the payout on that annuity for 5 years. It's a rider. So instead of $10,000 and you hit 2 of the activities of daily living, you don't have to go in the nursing home. You just hit 2 of those activities of daily living. It will double the payout for 5 years so that you can cover home health care or a nurse to come by or somebody to help come by and just clean the house, help you, take a bath, fix a meal or something like that. So they're hybrid policies, and you say, okay, I could use it for income if I needed it. I could use it for that long-term care approach where it covers activities of daily living. It's not a long-term care policy, but it covers activities of daily living. And then if you don't need either one of those, you can leave it to your heirs, and they get all the money that's grown protected within that annuity. So that's what we mean by maybe your long-term care could be covered by a policy, but it definitely needs to be covered by your plan. What's my plan to cover my long-term care? And the very worst policy is decide which one of your kids you're going to move into or in with, or which one of your kids is going to move in with you. That's a policy we try to avoid.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if there's any way you can pre-decide what you're going to do with a plan, not necessarily a policy, whether it be a hybrid life insurance, putting away money for that, or a hybrid annuity, that's what we try to do.
And this is why that is such a critical part of the retirement blueprint that you build for folks, is having these conversations and figuring this out. We know that this is a huge source of stress for folks, but with a solid plan in place, you can navigate this challenge, this long-term care risk successfully. Again, that number to call is 888-930-5609. This is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation. Come in and sit down with one of the all-star advisors at Mosley Wealth Management and have them start the process of building you your very own complimentary retirement blueprint. More on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley right after this.
Which will you spend more money on in retirement, food or healthcare? Do you take your investments out of the stock market now that you're retired? How do you know if you've saved enough to stay retired? Will your Social Security check be reduced in the future? How do you produce income from your nest egg to fight costs like taxes and inflation? At Mosley Wealth Management, Tom Mosley and the team take the guessing out of retirement planning by devising a written plan that accounts for all of your concerns. The bigger question, are you going to be okay in retirement? Find out the answers to your retirement questions by calling Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609, 888-930-5609.
Will you outlive your money? It's a scary thought, but it's a real concern for many people. In our opinion, that's why it's crucial to have a solid retirement plan in place. We believe that with proper planning, you can work towards making your money last as long as you do. Don't wait until it's too late to start thinking about your financial future. Call Tom Mosley and the team at Mosley Wealth Management today to learn how we can help you create a retirement plan that can potentially help you obtain peace of mind and security for years to come. Don't let the fear of running out of money in retirement keep you up at night. Take control of your financial future today by calling 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management, and I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. We are continuing this important conversation on different risks that today's modern retiree is facing. This next one, Tom, oh boy, buckle up. We are going to be talking about Social Security risk.
Ta-da!
Oh gosh, right? I mean, so
Yes.
much goes into this conversation. There's so many different directions we could take it. I know we're going to try to fit this all into one segment. I think this is an interesting concept to think of Social Security risk. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, the risk is there's several facets to this risk, okay? They're all kind of different sides. The risk is taking it at the wrong time for you. I always point out, this week we had a couple of Social Security events. I'm going to tell you next segment about some of the events we've got coming up. And I always stress in those Social Security events, don't listen to somebody else's advice.
Yes.
Because nobody else is lying to you. Nobody's wrong. They are right for themselves. They are telling you their situation and is probably, I hope, 100% right for them. But what is 100% right for you is not necessarily the same thing that's right for Bubba the plumber.
Right.
And it's not what's right for Bob at the water cooler or Sally in the teacher's lounge. You need to know what is best for you when it comes to Social Security. And if you do the wrong thing, you have a risk of making the wrong choice. There's a risk to Social Security. Will it last? Will it really go down in 9 years in 2033 to only a 79% payout? So if you're supposed to get if you're supposed to get $4,000, are you really only going to get less than $3,200? Well, unless Congress changes their rules, that's going to happen. You say, Tom, where did you hear that? I read it on the Social Security statement that you can get online at ssa.gov. And you need to go on there and set up your own account. And when you open it up, they've been telling us for over a decade now, if Congress doesn't change the rules by 2033, 2034, we're only going to be able to pay out 79%. That's a real risk. Here's the issue, though. What Social Security does, what Congress does, we can't even vote in the right people and expect them to have the power to get something done. Here's what you've got to do. What are you going to do if they do reduce it by 20%? If you're marginal in retirement, or if you're banking on Social Security, the average American, it's 40% of your Social Security. But whatever you're banking on in for Social Security in retirement, if that doesn't come through and only 80% of it comes through, what are you going to do? Where are you going to make that up? What is your plan? See, there's no 4% like we talked about in that first segment adjustment. Okay, you're not going to be able to 4% of a little more. Well, I'm going to have to print that money. What are you going to do if you build all the building blocks and then you turn around and a whole section of your wall, not the whole wall, but 20% of that wall is not there anymore? Okay. What are you going to do? So those are the risks. There are all kinds of different risks.
And I think there's another overarching risk that relates to Social Security, which is there are so many rules, so many complexities, so many things that folks aren't aware of. For example, I'll offer up this one. If you go ahead and claim Social Security before your full retirement age and you are still working, a lot of folks don't realize that you're going to have to give some of your benefit back.
Maybe
You're subject to those give backs. Yeah. A lot of people aren't aware of that. A lot of people aren't aware of the tax implications. And you could have up to 85% of your Social Security benefit taxed. There's so many things that can go wrong, if you will, in the Social Security equation without the proper knowledge and understanding of how all these pieces fit together.
A guy came in a while back and he came in, he was really excited. He said, I'm turning 62. My brother told me I needed to go down and turn on my Social Security at 62 because he's heard that they're going to diminish what they're going to give. They may quit giving Social Security. And by the way, they've never said they're going to stop giving Social Security out to people. They've only said that they may have to reduce the benefit that's paid out. But this guy was all excited about turning it on at 62. Well, in the course of doing the Envision and finding out where he was, he's making $125,000 a year.
Wow.
To your point, Kristen, in 2024, you can only make $22,320 this year if you're under full retirement age, but you're drawing Social Security. That means you're over 62 years of age. If you go over $22,320, for every $2 over that, you have to pay back $1 of Social Security. Gotcha. Gotcha. Big gotcha. Okay.
Huge gotcha. Yeah.
And so many people don't know about that.
Yep.
And then they just to make it more complicated, it's like $59,560 in the year you turn your full retirement age you can make up until the month you turn full retirement age. Okay. Again, here's the Social Security rules that are just out of outer Mongolia in a different language almost than real people speak. And if you go over by $3, every $3 over, you pay back $1 of Social Security. So that's you're making too much money. That's you're working and you're still taking, but you're not full retirement age. The good news is after you hit full retirement age, you can make whatever you want. But the bad news is, in spite of what Roosevelt promised way back in the 30s, that it'll never be taxed, it will be taxed. It will be taxed if you go over certain thresholds. They start at $25,000 for a single person, $32,000 for a married couple. It gets into full force at $34,000 for a single person and $44,000 for a married couple. But you will be taxed once you go over this crazy formula called provisional income, and you go over $44,000 of income, you will be taxed on 85% of your Social Security when you reach certain levels. So there's so many gotchas, and it's not just that it might not be there, but it's just that you're taking a risk that part of it could be gone. You're taking a risk when you're winging it on your own. It's not time for you to do it yourself. You need to get some input and some advice. And even people who've taken my class who work at the Social Security office are constantly telling us, look, we're not allowed to give advice.
Right.
We're allowed to give information, but we're not allowed to give people options and instructions and things like that, because they just don't want us giving people options. Because if we mistake, think about all those people would have to be trained on all of these crazy rules that Social Security has. Now, you say, well, why should we come to you, Tom? Why should we work with an advisor from Mosley Wealth Management? Well, guess what? We still don't know all of Social Security's ins and outs, but every one of my advisors has taken a course from the National Social Security Advisors Administration, and we've passed that course. It's a proctored exam. It's a 19-module course, and we take it every year so that we can be up to date on Social Security. It's your money, but you're our client, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for you. Even we don't make any money off your Social Security, but even in giving you the best advice we possibly can, we have to make sure what we're saying is right. And do we know all the answers? Absolutely not, Kristen. There's so many times that being a part of this association, we're able to call the authorities. It's an office out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And we even call the authorities sometimes and say, we've got X, Y, and Z. What's the formula that we need to use? And they say, we don't know. We'll find out. And they know who to call at the Social Security Administration that can give us answers. So having that as a resource.
Yes.
That's why we do so many Social Security seminars and workshops all over Southern California. We do those so that we can come in. And this week, I had people come in. I had a lady came up right after the Social Security workshop in Yorba Linda. And she said, you know what? She said, what you've told me tonight, I know I'm going to work 2 more years. I was thinking maybe I could retire, but I need to work 2 more years to fill in zero gaps on my 35 years of earnings history. So all kinds of little things. That's a big thing to understand.
Right.
You say, what do you mean 35 years? I thought it was 40 quarters. Well, you have to work 40 quarters in order to qualify for Social Security. And
which translates to 10 years.
Which translates to 10 years, but really it doesn't. Here's one of the funny, messed up rules. You can actually work in January, and if you make $2,000 or so in January, you're covered for all 4 quarters for that year. So it's really crazy. You've got to check it out. You've got to have somebody help you look at it to make sure you're there. And the 40 quarters is one thing, but you said, Tom, 35 years. Yeah, they take the top 35 earning years. And if you've only worked 33 years and paid in, and a lot of you are out there, let's talk about ladies who 30 or 40 years.
Take time out of the workforce, right? Yeah.
They take time out of the workforce to have babies and to raise babies until they go to school. The normal time period for a person 65 years of age, I'm told by a statistic I've read, that was the normal lady has an 8-year gap in their Social Security earnings, even if they work pretty much full time, because they took off to raise children. But how are you going to find that out? You're going to have to investigate. You're going to have to look at it. And as I stressed earlier, everybody that gives you their view of Social Security or what happened to them is telling you the truth. It's just that the truth for them and the reality for them, and the key word here is the optimal time for them to take Social Security is not necessarily and probably not the optimal time for you to take Social Security. You need some individual input. And that's what I feel like our advisors are uniquely trained. We even had a big box firm recently where they told one of their people, And I'm so glad they did, because they came over as clients. We don't really talk about Social Security. There's a group called Mosley Wealth Management that talks about that. Bingo.
Mhm.
We wear that as a badge of honor.
Absolutely. It really does set you apart in this space. And it's such a critical conversation, because how can you build a solid income plan for your retirement without this critical Social Security piece? You know, we say this on the show all the time. How you make a decision in one area of your financial life can and will affect all the others. Social Security is a perfect example of that. If you want to make sure that you are getting a comprehensive, holistic financial plan that's in your best interest, that takes all these different pieces of the conversation into account, you need to pick up the phone and call 888-930-5609 and schedule a time to come in and receive your own complimentary retirement blueprint. More on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley right after this.
Get your own no-cost retirement plan review at 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Do you know how you'll generate income from your investments along with your Social Security in retirement? In our opinion, it's never too early to start the income planning process for your future. An income plan can help you work towards creating a steady stream of income to support you throughout your retirement years. Don't leave your financial future to chance. Take control today and start income planning for your retirement. Call the team at Mosley Wealth Management so we can help you design a complimentary written income plan to help you live the retirement you've always wanted. Call 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. And before the break, we were talking a lot about the different Social Security workshops that you do throughout Southern California. To register to be able to come to these events, again, this costs you nothing. These events are offered to you completely free, but we do ask that you register so the team can be prepared for you and make sure they have enough chairs and enough materials. Simply go to mosleywealthmanagement.com. That's MOSLEY wealthmanagement.com. Another thing we invite you to do is, if you have a question for Tom that you would like for him to answer on this radio show, we invite you to email your question in. Now, don't worry, we always change names to protect your privacy, so you don't need to worry about that. But you can email your question to info@mosleywealthmanagement.com. Again, that's info@mosley wealthmanagement.com. Well, Tom, it's time to talk about the final risk of this dirty dozen list, as you so eloquently stated at the beginning of today's show. This risk is one that is becoming more and more prevalent. We are hearing more and more stories of retirees in particular becoming victim to them. We need to talk about the fraud and the scams that are going on, because they are rampant.
You know, with the advent of AI, and I know that stands for artificial intelligence, but when it comes to scams, I would coin a phrase, and I've not heard this from anybody else, but it's creating absolute insanity is what it's creating when it comes to frauds and scams. And there are some real life stories of retirees and pre-retirees and 20-year-olds and 15-year-olds who have fallen to scams, and a lot of them are because of the abilities of artificial intelligence. Some of the scams have been around for years for seniors, but there are so many artificial intelligence type created scams that are unbelievable. Kristen, you were telling me about one that was in your family recently, or in somebody you knew.
Yeah.
about.
So unfortunately, I know way too many stories of this. And thankfully, both my parents and my in-laws have had attempted scams on them. But thankfully, they had the wherewithal to know that it was a scam. But what was so scary about it was the exact voice. So for example, you know, a lot of these scams start off with someone calls an elderly person pretending to be the grandchild, pretending to be the nephew, pretending to be whoever. And it's that person's voice, but it's not them. And that's what's so terrifying. And so I was sharing with Tom before we started today's show, something else that really scares me is we received a letter this week from a financial institution that we have a small checking account that we've had for years, and we've just kept it. They shared in this letter, "We are excited to introduce an incredible new feature that adds convenience while enhancing your account security when you call us, Voice ID. And they are pitching this, Tom, as a really good thing that you don't have to remember passwords and will just be able to go off your voice. And I'm sitting here thinking, I am not enrolling in this knowing that people can take your voice and manipulate it for frauds and scams. And now you're telling me that you want to just use my voice to verify my identity for financial accounts? I don't think so. This is terrifying.
Right. I know part of what happens with Avatar. Now, with AI, let me go into this just a little bit, is you can look into a camera and talk your voice. And if you look at that camera for 2 or 3 minutes, it's called, they can build an avatar, which is an avatar in the way I would look at it and my understanding of it, which is pretty, knowledgeable about it, is they can build an artificial you. Okay. And they use your voice, they use your image. Some of the scams that I've seen, and I talk about even 15, 16, 17-year-old girls, they've been able to take the camera was on their laptop or their iPad or whatever the camera was on, and it videoed them, and they were looking into the camera, and they were able to build an avatar of them where they just had all kind of profane images and different things like that.
Right, because you were saying they take their head and put it on someone else's body or whatever the case might be.
Exactly, and they can make a movie of you doing that. You're talking about voice avatar, where they take your voice and you have a certain voice inflection. They've always been able to do that. Well, not always, but recently they've been able to do it. Well, they've added that with AI, and when you receive a phone call from somebody that's a relative or a friend, just like if they were offering you that they could understand your voice, Kristen, you could receive a phone call from somebody with all these people that are telemarketing and things.
Yep.
And by the way, I'm rambling a little bit here, but be careful when you have one of these telemarketers. You pick up the phone, it's a telemarketer. Be careful about what you say, because they may be recording your voice to build an avatar. And the particular word I've been warned, and we talked about this at Ed Slott's 4-day, the 2 days that I went to just a couple of months ago. We'd go 4 days a year to train on tax training, but he also dedicated some time for scams and frauds. Be careful when you say yes. When you say the word yes, they can turn around and build a whole recording that they called you up and wanted to know if you ordered this and you wanted this, and they can dub in your yes, 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 and make it sound like you ordered something. So, and here's the thing about scams and frauds. Let me give you a story. Back in the early 70s, really, I think it was 1973, I was very young. I was still in college, and I thought I wanted to go to work for a bank. And for 2 days, I worked for a bank. Well, they start you out, and you're going to be a teller. You're going to be somebody who actually is a teller. And that's usually why when you go to a teller at the bank, they don't know much, because they just started, okay? And so I was going to be a teller. And what they did, they put me in a room and they gave me a $1 bill, a $2 bill, because they were more prevalent at that time, a $5 bill, a $10 bill, a $20 bill, and a $50 bill, and a $100 bill. And they said, study these for 1 hour. And I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm saying, are you kidding me? These bills, that it's a 1, it's a 2, it's a 5, it's a, I'll rattle through that thing. And then at the end of an hour, they came back and they gave me a 100-question test, only I couldn't look at the dollars. And, oh my goodness, I think I scored like 22 on it, okay? And they set me back down and they said, well, the good news is you're normal. Now, if you're going to be a teller, we want you to study these for another hour. And I think I improved my score up to around 58.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, and I asked the guy, I said, why? He said, why did you do this? He said, we want you to note scams and frauds and fraudulent money and counterfeit money. And I asked him, I said, well, why do you show me real dollar bills? And you're doing that so that I can understand and find counterfeits. He said, because we can't mimic all the counterfeits. They're as different as everybody who wants to counterfeit a dollar.
Right.
So what we have to do is you have to know the real thing.
Yes.
You have to know what a $1 bill looks like. You have to know what a 5, a 10, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the problem with a terrorist is they don't act normal, and they could be abnormal and do anything. And the same way with a scammer, you don't know what they're going to hit you with next. They're not going to talk about something that's unrealistic. They're going to sound so close to the truth. By the way, I know you're a believer, Kristen. I'm a believer. This goes all the way back to Satan. 3 things Satan told Adam in the Garden of Eden. 2 of them were true. 1 of them was wrong. Okay. And so it's always been close to the truth is what a scammer or a frauder will do. So just some of the things that they'll do, they'll call you up and they'll say, hey, you missed jury duty and you owe us $1,000. Go to a grocery store and get 2 $500 gift certificates, gift cards, and call us with the numbers and we won't come arrest you. Okay. And all kinds of things. And be careful who you give out your social security numbers to, your passwords to, all of those things. And, you know, we've talked a lot on this segment about scams in general. I could go for another whole show on this.
I know.
Really
and let me just add real quick with the family members, you know, have this conversation with your loved ones, talk about it. And if you get a call from someone, call that very person and verify if it was them or not before you do anything. And maybe even create a safe password between you where if you do get a scam call, you can say, well, what's the password? And guarantee you the scammer is probably not going to know it. So
exactly. We want you, right. We want you to use your money in retirement, not lose it. Be careful for scams. They're exploding right now.
Again, we could go on and on about this, but really what we want you to do is have a solid plan in place to protect and preserve what you have worked so hard for all these years. That's the whole point of the series of talking about these risks so that you can be proactive and guard yourself against them. But here's the good news. You don't have to do it alone. The team of Mosley Wealth Management is here and they would love to help and serve you. For the last time this week, that number to call to get your complimentary retirement blueprint, 888-930-5609. That's all we have time for today. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We look forward to being back with you next week here on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley.
Tom Mosley and the team have helped thousands of folks like you in Southern California plan for their retirement. Now make the call yourself. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through Mosley Wealth Management Incorporated. Mosley Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership license number OB61811. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refers to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives, may give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties, which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services.